Hey, what's up folks, JK here. Welcome back to my channel. So by the end of this video, you're going to learn how you can do a sample continuous deployment in Google Cloud using Cloud Build. And we're going to use the Google Cloud functions here, but the concept is similar. You can use App Engine, or you can use Compute Engine, or you can use whatever service you want, or even Kubernetes engine for that matter. So the whole demonstration would be we're going to simulate a scenario where a developer would commit some code to GitHub. So basically the developer would commit the code to the GitHub, and so that GitHub will have the cloud function. So as soon as the developer commits to that, so the Cloud Build, which is a managed service from Google Cloud, will take the code. So it takes the code, and at the back end it saves that files and everything. Like you have a staging that happens in the Google Cloud storage, so we don't have to worry about that part for this demonstration. But so as soon as the file is picked up in the Cloud Build, you have a bunch of steps that you write in the Cloud Build, which is in the form of configuration, which I'm going to show what I have done for the sake of cloud function. And so that steps will decide what we have to do. For example, if that cloud configuration file has to use a specific builder, or it has to use something else, so that we're going to see in the configuration file. So once it is picked up from GitHub, the code will be deployed to the cloud function. So let's say at a start, I have a hello world function, which is a sample function, but you can use any complex function as well. And if I want to change or make a change to the function, I will commit that to the GitHub, and automatically the Cloud Build has to deploy that into the hello world function and change the code. So that's the whole scenario. But there are limitless ways of innovating here, and you can use Cloud Deployment Manager, which I have discussed in my previous video, and you can integrate that with Cloud Build as well. Now for starters, so Cloud Build is a serverless CI/CD platform from Google Cloud. It's a very easy to use tool. So it has a build configuration. So the configuration has bunch of steps, like your Ansible playbook has bunch of tasks. Similar to that, it has bunch of build steps. So each step is executed in a Docker container. So with that, so let's go to the console. So the first step is go to Cloud Build service, and since here we're going to deploy in a cloud function, go to the settings and make sure you enable cloud functions deployer, rather developer. So check this status as enabled as soon as you go to the Cloud Build and click on settings. So once this is done, if you go to the dashboard, it will show you the history of the builds that have happened in the past, and then whether they are failure, how much percentage of failed and pass, and the duration, etc, etc. So those things are displayed here, and in the history you will see all my previous builds that have happened. Obviously I had to practice before I have to demonstrate it to you guys. But this page contains all the history about the builds, and the trigger, which is what we're going to use here. I'm going to show you what I have done here basically. But the trigger is the one that would pull the file from the GitHub, the public GitHub. I'm going to use my own GitHub repository and deploy that cloud function file or the Python file to the cloud function service. So that's the tutorial. So before, what I would recommend, even before setting up the triggers, is go to the Cloud Shell by clicking on Activate Cloud Shell and open this in a new window. You can close this after you've opened that. So I have created a Cloud Build folder. So in this folder, I have basically a simple main.py file, and this is a very simple Python default hello world file. So as soon as you go to the cloud functions, you create a sample code, you'll get this code. But in any case, if you are struggling with this, you can go back to my repository, which I'm going to share in the description. You might have already used this in my past videos, but in this repository, go to the main.py file and copy this Python file, and create that file inside the Cloud Shell. So that's number one. And number two is, obviously you need a requirements.txt. This is again the requirement for putting all your libraries inside the cloud function. So these two files are the default files. So once you have those two files, I'm gonna show you by first using cloud build from the gcloud command line interface, so that you would know how to test this out first, right? So the command is gcloud builds and submit config.yaml and function -source.zip. So before we even execute this command, I'm going to show you the sample configuration file that I was talking about. Let me open this in here itself. Okay, so if I maximize this is the main config.yaml file. So the steps, so these are the number of steps that we're defining. So we have only one step here, so that's going to deploy the cloud function, and this is the cloud builders. So if you're not aware of what is cloud builders, so cloud builders are nothing but bunch of Docker container images. So we're going to use the gcloud image here, and if you want to look at all the cloud builders, you can see here these are all the default builders, but there are community based builders as well, I think. So if you click on any of these links, you can see a common builders are gcloud and then git and then gk deploy. For instance, if you want to use maven or npm to build your code, you can also use those builders. So in this case, what we are trying to do is we're trying to use the gcloud builder, and in a gcloud, as you know, you can deploy your cloud function through the command line interface. So exactly we're going to pass the same parameters. Now for example, if you have to deploy the cloud function using gcloud, you would do gcloud function deploy, and this is the function name, and you're going to have the main.py files and requirements.txt and all those files in that source repo, in that location wherever you're trying to deploy from. Or if you're picking up from the source, you would give the git repository name there. So this is a standard command when you're trying to deploy using gcloud, right? And if I go back to my code, here the builder is gcloud, and pretty much we're going to use the same arguments here. So arguments here is function. So basically we're going to deploy the function, so it is functions and deploy, and this is the name of the function that I have defined in my main.py. And here the source is important. So source, either you can give a complete path of the source where you have the actual code, or you can give a repository or anything that you can define here. And because I want to git clone, obviously whenever there is a commit, I would clone the whole thing. It automatically would clone the whole thing, and the source will obviously be at the same specific directory or the working directory, so I don't have to specify anything here. So that's why I left it as dot here, which means the source will be picked up from that specific directory wherever the whole build is happening. Maybe it is happening inside a container, so it's going to pick it up from there. And the trigger is HTTP, right? Because I want to use HTTP based endpoint for this function to trigger. So that's HTTP. And if you want to use pubsub, you can use pubsub here, but we're not doing that for this demo. And runtime, I'm using Python 37 3.7. You can use 3.8 as well. Allow unauthenticated. So this is nothing but I want to allow the cloud function to be open for internet, for anybody who can access it without even having an IAM permission or service account or anything. So it's open for everybody to access it. So that's unauthenticated, and these things are very well documented and defined in the cloud functions documentation itself. You can go through that and you would know exactly what you have to pass as the parameters here. And so we have the cloud build.yaml file that I have created. You can also create it in the JSON format. So this is one important file, and obviously we have the actual Python code. Like I was showing you before, it has nothing. It has just it returns hello world, and it takes the arguments, and this is a standard Flask format that you would have to use. And then requirements.txt has all the dependencies here. We're not using any other dependencies, so it's all blank for now. Okay, so we're going to quickly test this from the gcloud command. So basically what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to run gcloud builds and submit. This is the command configuration. Here I'm going to use cloud build.yaml and function. So this is the source .zip. So when you're trying to run from gcloud builds, from the gcloud interface or the command line, you have to give the source as a zip file. So I have compressed main.py and requirements.txt into the zip file, and I'm passing that as a source. Now if I run this, okay, so I have to set the project before that. So gcloud config set project. The project ID is YouTube demo. We're going to run this again. So if you want to look at the build file, cloud build.yaml, you can see that I'm deploying a sample function here. All right, now so let's run this. Oh, my bad. Okay, could not find the source function hyphen source dot zip. Okay, let me see. Okay, spelling wrong, spelling mistake here, func tion. So what it does is, first it will stage the zip file into a GCS bucket, and that's why you might have seen here I've put the GCS bucket here in the previous diagram. And here the flag minus runtime is required for the newer functions, which I have missed in the code. So I can do unzip function source all vi main, my bad, so vi cloud build.yaml, and I can get the runtime from my code. Oops. And I will also pass this here. Okay, it's good. So once you have done this for the first time, this would be required. So let's say you want to make the changes to the cloud function again next time. You don't have to worry about the runtime because the cloud function is already created. You're just changing the code at that point of time. All right, so now let's do this again. So it can find the image. Basically what happens is, first time when I was running this before when I was creating this video, I have already used the gcloud builder. So when I use that, the gcloud builder image is part of the container registry. So that's how it maintains the whole thing in the container registries, right? So next time when I'm trying to use gcloud again, it doesn't have to download the image from the public repository and stuff. So it maintains that. Now if you want to look at what's going on in the actual build, you can look into the console, and in the history tab you can see here the real-time execution of the whole build. And while this is happening, you can also open a duplicate tab maybe and go to the cloud function. All right, so the sample function is getting created. So as soon as this is done, we would know if the function got created successfully. So it's not done yet completely. Okay, it says the main has no attribute sample hyphen function. So for that, what we have to do is, whenever you see this error, go here and fix the main function to or you either change the function name or fix it here. It's the same thing. So let's say put sample underscore function here. So go to your cloud build.yaml file and make sure that the name is same here as well. So now, by the way, I'll remove some of the things that I don't require in this directory. I'm going to build this again. So now if I go back to the cloud functions, and you will see a new function is getting executed, rather deployed or created. So I can delete this old function which I no more needed. So let's give it some time. I'll resume the video once it is done. All right, so now if you see, the build is successful. If I go to the build history here, so you see a red tick which is successful, and you see the source and stuff. All right, this is good. Okay, now let's go to the cloud function. If I go to the sample underscore function, we see the source is here, and we have the function to execute as sample underscore function. Perfect, everything is good. But the main demo starts now, right? Basically what we want to do is we want to trigger or deploy function as soon as there are changes made to the repository, in this case which is GitHub. So for that, go back to your cloud build, go to the trigger section on the left side and create a new trigger. Let's say you do not have any repository yet. For the first time, you have to create a new repository here. So if you're using GitHub repository, like most of you guys might be using that. So click on GitHub repository and click on continue. So here I have already connected my Cloud Advocate account, which you guys are aware of it. Or if you're trying to create a new, create a new account, or rather add a new account, you would click on add a new account. So what this will do is it will get permission behalf of you and add GitHub to this cloud build repository, which means your GitHub needs permission to send a hook whenever there is a new commit to the branch. So all those permissions will be taken care. And if you have any questions on this, let me know in the comment section. I'll help you out. But I have done that part. It's very easy, step-by-step process. Click on next, and then you will see what you have to do. So once that is done, you will have the trigger created. And now when I go to the settings, so this is the important part here. So the name is the default name, and here the description is push to any branch, which means anytime if I make any change to any part of the code in any branch, this build will be triggered. So obviously, it will try to find for the build configuration, which is cloud build.yaml file or whatever that is starting with .yaml file and stuff. So that is good thing. It will search for that. But the best scenario or the recommended way of doing this is, give a specific branch. Let's say you create a builds branch or a Google Cloud branch, especially for this. Then give that branch here and try to do it in a proper way. I just gave it default, and now if I make a change in my master branch, it will be triggered automatically, which I'm going to show you. So that's with respect to push to any branch. And If you want to use a tag, you can use a tag, but this was the default setting. Here you can use git ignore and all those things, and so the build configuration, it will automatically detect a cloud build.yaml file, and if you want to specifically give a specific name, like for example you don't want to use cloud build.yaml, you want to use something else, then you can define that or name that here. Cancel. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a small change in the GitHub, and you will see that it will trigger the build as soon as I make a change in the GitHub. So I'm going to keep the history tab, and you can see the time is 9:55, which I've executed before. So now we're going to make a change here. I'm gonna decrease the screen size and go to the cloud, Google Cloud, and then I'll make a small change here. Let's say that first time I want to deploy this, right? So I want to go to main.py and edit this file and call it as, just put few more marks here and commit the changes. As soon as I've clicked on commit, you will see that the build will start. So the build will trigger automatically, and you'll also get the commit ID here, and if you click on that, it goes to the GitHub page and you will see the actual commit ID. So that's a good thing. It has a proper integration with GitHub. All right, so while this is happening, I'll pause the video and I'll resume it once this is done. All right, so the build got successfully executed, and then we can see all the details here. We have a green tick. If I go back to the cloud functions, I see a new function that got deployed. And now if I want to test this out real quick, I can go to testing and click on test the function, and you can see the 3 marks here. Now let's say you want to make a change to the code, and say instead of hello world, I would say hello cloud advocates or something like that, and commit the change. Go back to the history. We see a new build that is getting executed. So while that is happening, you can see the cloud function is being deployed because there's a new function or new changes that are getting deployed. And this is where you would like to use canary based deployments or the blue-green deployments and stuff. All right, now we have the new function. Let's go to the testing again and click on test function. Yep, that was a caching issue, but you can see we have a new output, hello cloud advocates. So this is a sample demonstration of this whole thing, like as a developer, if you commit a change to the GitHub, how it gets called by the cloud build and it gets deployed to the cloud function. Now you can do the same exercise for App Engine or Google Kubernetes Engine, or you can also integrate Cloud Deployment Manager, and you can make this whole thing more complex by integrating with Git. So the most important thing is, let's say if anybody would ask you how cloud build is different from Jenkins, and in which scenarios, or why would you have to use Jenkins instead of cloud build. So this is where I think you have to think about this in a way that Jenkins is a cloud agnostic tool, which means like you can use Jenkins and you can deploy into multiple clouds, and most of the enterprises and companies use Jenkins to control multiple cloud service providers. So that's where it would be more helpful to use Jenkins in those scenarios. Now if you are sticking only to Google Cloud, and cloud build might shine there. So that's one advantage of cloud build is obviously because it's a managed service. You don't have to maintain your slaves or servers and all those things, unlike Jenkins, because Jenkins, when you set up an environment, you have to maintain the master nodes, you have to maintain the slaves, you have to do all the maintenance work there. But in the case of cloud build, it is completely controlled by Google Cloud, obviously, and that's why they call it as a serverless platform. But if you have any other questions on this tutorial, let me know in the comment section. And that's all I wanted to cover here, and we might maybe come up with more scenarios that I think that would be helpful for you all. But this is an important concept to remember and to practice. Thank you so much for watching, and let me know your feedback. Thank you. Take care. Bye.